go, here we 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 go.
And it's Friday, and here we are.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
snowing. It was snowing on the thing.
I know.
So
Wait,
what?
that's something you're way too familiar with right now, right?
It snowed here pretty good. Yeah, I got about 1.5 feet of snow.
Goodness.
Cool.
So if you didn't know, Jesse's in the far northeast of the United States, and there's a nor'easter that blew through. Is it still snowing, or is it done?
No, it's kind of funny because it should be a non-event, like it snows here, but the first one of the year is always a big deal. So no, it stopped yesterday. Some of us are happy, some of us are sad. It's all good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know what that's like. Again, Southern California. I think I had said yesterday, we have two climates, fire and warm. That's
how's Texas doing, you guys? You got a lot of snow down there in Texas? No.
Well, it snowed last week, but it stopped. Like the snow was. I think it was actually the storm that eventually made its way up to you and picked up steam along the way. But when it was down by us, it was. I think it got to within about 20 miles. Like 20 miles north of us got snow. We did not, but it was very close. My parents got snow. They live 90 miles north of me, so. Yeah, it was. That's exciting for this part of the country.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The 100% sunshine, like at least most of it is very very useful because it does get cold. I noticed like moving from Leeds in England, it does drop quickly. Like it goes up to 16 and then goes down to 4 or 3 at night real quick. But what I'm really excited about is I can see clear skies like Orion galaxy straight on the house. So that's great.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, well.
Containers. Right. Okay.
We've been reminiscing about the weather, but let's reminisce a little bit about the last. Yeah. Not even 3 weeks, but it's really been about 6 weeks of revelations, of 6 weeks of awesomeness, almost gifts that have been given to us, just one after another. It's hard to keep up. It's been pretty rapid fire, and it started with Kubecon, and it just kept going and going, and then we had 3 weeks of reInvent. And we had some, a new wave of big and small announcements throughout reInvent. So let's talk about what we saw. Let's give people, an idea of what they can go and review and check out and see. Maybe they have a little bit of downtime coming up between, Christmas and New Year's or something like that. And they want to get caught up with the latest happenings. So where should we start? What's been a cool revelation for you guys?
Wow. Honestly, there has been so much. I have to say I work a lot with ECS and kind of, I like to build, using AWS native a lot. And one thing that was really cool of an announcement to me was actually the Open Telemetry distro. And it went GA, I think it was this month, right? Like a couple weeks ago. And I think it's just, we're starting to see a lot more contribution to the open source community. And what's really nice is we're seeing AWS native start to bridge with the open source community. And this is one example of, if I want to ship my metrics outside of just CloudWatch and kind of the defaults, I can use a tool that AWS supports to ship to other AWS locations or even other open source projects.
Mhm.
You know, there's a theme. I think you're touching on kind of a broader theme that that I picked up on throughout these past many weeks, and that is that our customers operate lots of places, and sometimes it's all in AWS, but sometimes it's not. And when it's not, they want to have a consistent experience. And so having something like open telemetry distribution allows for them to operate, and have metrics aggregation and collection in AWS the same way that they might be doing it in their own data center. So that's really cool. And we did that with a few other things too. Like you might be oh, Jesse, I see you have.
Before we go, so it's even, to me, open telemetry is even, it's a great example of that pattern also in the upstream project, right? Because open telemetry is, for those who aren't familiar, it's effectively kind of the next version of open tracing and open metrics. So they're rather than going V2 of those, they have actually kind of crossed the beams, come together, and open telemetry is sort of the next iteration of those. And those projects came out of a need to have, sort of a unified, kind of focus in those spaces, right? And so not only now are you looking at something that you can use across, AWS or open source, but also it gives you a unified, like, single thing to learn and operate with and use. So you can, instrument your code with one SDK and it works across a number of solutions, and you can actually swap them in and out, right? Because you have these different collectors and stuff. So it's just so cool. And I think it sort of tells a really great story throughout the whole stack. And it's really good for our customers. It's good for, and it's good for the, the community of the ecosystem for us to jump in and contribute.
Yeah. And I feel like we've done that elsewhere too. Where else have we kind of opened it up so that you can have the same experience in your own data center as well as in AWS?
Are you talking about Prometheus and Grafana?
I'm talking about, like I said, this is a recurring theme.
Anywheres,
it's happening. Yeah,
exactly.
It's the Anywheres, Prometheus, Grafana. There's a lot of these decisions where we've said, you know what, let's make it easier in your data center. Let's make it easier on your own compute, and that's different. It's awesome. So we're starting to really expand.
The Firelance integration within Fargate is a good example of that as well. Like, it started off with Fluent D and Fluent Bit being the very popular projects, and now with Firelance, like, it provides that integration, deep integration around observability and logs. So there are improvements and features everywhere that customers can benefit from, work with. I think it reminds me of our announcement. Again, this is very security specific, but Security Hub, when it was announced a couple of years ago, AWS Security Hub did the same thing for security, where it could feed in information from other sources and it would send out information out to other sources. So it becomes more open for customers to integrate.
That's awesome. Yep, great example.
Like, if you're looking at using something that is sort of industry standard, or it's a specification that's open source, we're making those things a little more transparent. And I guess that's what I was thinking with Prometheus and Grafana. So we announced managed versions of those. Well, Prometheus based on Cortex, and then managed Grafana. And I think this is a win on a couple of fronts, right? Like, so not only do you get to basically use those patterns, and then you can possibly have this managed service that you can leverage, like so many other things in the cloud, it make it easier for you to do it at scale. But also, it's using Prometheus and Grafana. We didn't go out and reinvent those wheels. And the point with Grafana, it's even there's partnership in place, right? I mean, that they're really good at what they do, so we don't need to go reinvent that. We're just exposing sort of a potentially new ways to interact, which I think is just awesome.
I love that. I mean, imagine a world. So in addition, we brought up the anywheres already. So ECS Anywhere and EKS Anywhere, along with EKS Distro. Let's just talk about, the future for a second. There's a future where you can imagine that you provision an EKS cluster in your own data center that uses EKS distro, uses EKS Anywhere, and can ship metrics either to managed Prometheus, showing graphs on managed Grafana, or you can take that same setup and operate it in your own data center if for some reason you need that data to stay local. So you can start to do things the same way using the same APIs wherever you happen to operate. If it's in AWS, great. If it's in your own data center and you still have excess resources that you want to continue, you've paid for them, you want to continue to use them, or you need that data locality, whatever the reason is for you to have that, you still have that ability and you can still do things the same way. I just love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, just going back to that open telemetry, like I'm using that same agent. It's as Jesse said, it's the same SDK. So if I'm logging to, I'm shipping my metrics to CloudWatch and I want to switch to Jaeger. Okay. If I'm, shipping to X-Ray, sorry, and I want to go to Jaeger. Like, yeah.
See, we're going to be interactive. It's all pluggable. It's all good.
Yeah, but that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
You can plug and play and go where you need. And on the Anywheres, there was the ECS Anywhere announcement. So the difference between, the ECS Anywhere and the EKS Anywhere is the control plane lives in AWS still with ECS Anywhere. So if you have, you want to run, your containers on-prem, but you want to use ECS to manage the orchestration, you absolutely can do that with ECS Anywhere. So it's just continuing to, I think we're meeting our customers where they're at. We're helping them to, innovate and continue to move forward. So,
and it's simplifying. That's the best part, is like this stuff is just getting easier and easier. So
ECS Anywhere is so easy. It's like just so easy to use. It's so cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited.
And one of the things that interests me, and it's probably it's a feature that some of the customers might want to leverage, especially for security workloads and compliance kind of restrictive workloads where they want to keep the workloads on premises. ECS Anywhere, when customers adopt that particular technology, they have to be aware of what they are signing up to, because there is a lot to consider and manage when they are putting workloads, let's say PCI DSS compliant workloads, or a particular like healthcare regulation like HIPAA. What are the implications when they are using ECS Anywhere Fargate workloads on ECS with AWS, and then running their on-premises kind of setup where they need to comply and have a security function that's embedded within their own environment. So let's say there is a particular security requirement or a policy which requires the customers to use their own on-premises HSM, for example. How do they integrate and layer that within their platform? So that's going to be an interesting one for customers to solve, and we'll certainly help you there.
And also, if your data, we mentioned this when we had the ECS Anywhere show, we talked about it, but customers that are migrating to the cloud, but they're not there yet. Their data, I've seen this with a ton of enterprise customers that I've spoken to. They have data stores on site. They're old guard databases that have been. It's just not easy to just take it and move it to the cloud. It's going to take time. Now you can run your containers next to that data using ECS, right? You can live right next to your data.
And used to, you would have to wait to build out the tooling until you were ready to make that leap to the cloud. but now you can start building the tooling while you're still running in your data center. So that's really cool. Digital Hex points out, and yes, thank you, Cloud Shell. It's more of a container product than it is a container service. However, yes, absolutely. I think this is one that everyone across the board is going to be like super excited to start using. I've already started using it to bring up EKS clusters and stuff like that. So it's pretty awesome. And I, just like everything, it's only going to get better. So what else did we announce or talk about? I mean, there were some ECR announcements too.
A couple big ones. I mean, I'll just talk, Jess. Jesse's usually not this quiet. I don't know what's going on with him, but
I'm just trying to stay connected, man. This is the first time I'm trying to watch the chat. Actually, I'm really bad at doing two things at once.
Well, it's good. You picked a slow day in chat to do that. So
yeah, sound off in chat. What was your favorite? I see Alex Smasha mentions Proton. We're going to get to that one because that's one of my favorites as well. But what happened?
ECR. Yeah.
What happened with ECR?
There's a bunch of stuff, right? So I mean, from the start of reInvent, obviously ECR public, that's a big deal. So we have sort of and I think this is one of those things where we, a lot of times when we're talking about this or that, we always like to say, well, AWS is the thing, right? We're talking about this. It's just, well, ECR and ECR public it's ECR, right? But this is a huge new feature of ECR, where you're just able to flip a switch and go public, right, with a repo, but also the gallery. And the gallery is really cool. We're already seeing, some really interesting ideas on how people want to use it. We already see a lot of official images by some, with some big names where, if you're looking for something, you want to see it right there in ECR, it's right there, right? So there's lots of cool stuff there. I would mention, we have this, the ability for in your AWS account to set up a sort of a vanity name. And that is right now, it is evolving, right? How we handle that. So if you've requested one and you see the little clock next to your request, it is there, it is in flight. And we're working on kind of building a better system for that and making it more automated. We just weren't quite sure what people were going to do with it. So we wanted to keep it nice and open, which means that it's probably a little slower. So as we speak, the team is building out some automation for that. But that's super great because now you can have your own vanity named, registry with repositories under it. So, I signed up for one myself with my name. So, that's going to be wildly popular, I'm sure.
I'm going to do that also.
Super cool, right? And then, the powerful part of that is the gallery. Just having all of that inside under the auspices of that, secure, super scalable service. It's really great.
I've got one on Docker Hub with my name, like Pavan Mystery, but that has rate limits. So,
yeah, I have Brentley, and I have actually, like a couple of the workshops pull images from my Docker Hub, and over the holiday, I'm going to be moving that over to pull from ECR public. But I want to get, some vanity URL in place first. Before I can do that. So
I invited my friend Karthik over because he has an accidental pretty popular image on Docker Hub. He had one of the first Hello World images that wasn't literally Hello World. If you've seen it, it's the one with Lionel Richie, hello.
Oh yeah.
So I think it, he didn't promote it or anything. It just ended up with like 2 million polls or something. So but yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do here. So with this combination, and then of course we have the cross-region replication stuff, which is that's great. I mean, you want that. That's something that you would think, why doesn't it just do this? It should do this. It does it, right? So now you're able to push in a region, and if you configure the repo correctly, then just sort of gets replicated across other regions. So this makes a ton of sense.
Other accounts as well.
Exactly, other accounts, exactly. So it's awesome to have that, especially if you're building your images, you're pushing your images, and you're running containers from those images all on AWS. It just becomes so much more seamless. That's great. A lot of people are really excited about that.
And like one of the things that we announced for the private ECR earlier in the year was integration with KMS. So securing those images again, like, it'd be great to see customers kind of use ECR public and then leverage the security features if there are workloads or images that need to be stored securely with ECR private.
Yeah. And so first of all, did you mention, Jesse, that your images stored in ECR public are cross-region replicated behind the scenes automatically? I don't know if you said that and I missed it.
I didn't. Thank you for
okay.
That's
no,
right.
So I just didn't want to repeat. But yeah, so that's just when you push your images, so they're highly available when you push them to ECR public. And then we also enabled, obviously, cross-region replication. If you want to enable it, that feature is available for your private registries. But Brent, we were talking about before the show started, the EC2 image builder announcement. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so now there's a service for the service that you could use to build AMIs. They've been building images for, I don't know how long, a long, long time. They announced a new feature to also build your container images for you.
OCI compliant, OCI image compliant images. It'll build them up.
Yeah, so we're going to try this was actually a surprise for me, so I didn't have any demo ready for it or anything. So we're going to work on getting a demo going and bring that to you sometime in January, just to show you how you might be able to use it. But in the meantime, go poke at it. It's out there, it's live and available, so I'll certainly be doing the same thing.
Yeah, and yesterday's show, was it yesterday or the day before we talked about ECR? Was that yesterday? Time is
I know, right?
Lost on me.
It wasn't yesterday.
It was this week.
Yeah.
Yes, it was this week. It wasn't yesterday.
So this week we did talk. So if you are interested in hearing more about that, and by the way, containersfromthecouch.com or youtube.com/containersfromthecouch, we've basically everything we've mentioned, for the most part, not everything, but a lot of the things we're mentioning today, we've done a show on, either in a reInvent recap where we did a demo on it, or there was a show exclusively dedicated to it. So check it out if you're interested in seeing us actually demo these things in real time.
Totally.
So speaking of that, I don't know if you're going somewhere else, but I stole it. So speaking of having a show, right? One of the most popular shows that we had of this period was focusing on Proton.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people want to see more about that, like, various use cases or different features of it. And what's really cool about that is that it's just launched. So we're going to have new features, new integrations, new stuff to talk about. But that is awesome. Like, that service is super cool.
Yeah, and it's not even official yet. I mean, it's still preview, right? So even though it's preview, people are clamoring to find out more about it and stuff like that. So the team is super excited to get feedback, and there is a roadmap I'm going to paste in the chat, public roadmap about stuff that we're working on and stuff that we're researching. And whoops, wrong window. Here's the right one. So definitely check that out. Give us your feedback. Try it out. Try some of the examples. Give us your feedback. Keep in mind that, yes, it is preview, so it's not going to be, full featured, do everything that you could ever imagine. We have to start somewhere, and we like to start with MVP level, and then iterate on that. So that's what you're going to find with Proton, but it should give you a really good idea of what the possibilities are. Start your head spinning, and you can start to tell us, how would I use this, or what would I need to really connect one dot to the next in my environment. So let us know about that.
So for the viewers who are new to this on the show right now, who don't know what Proton is, can we quickly cover briefly what it is? That'd be great.
Yeah, so I like to call it platform as a service as a service. Um,
That's awesome.
so it's a platform for building platforms. So if you have a platform team in your enterprise, Proton is almost certainly going to help you out. So you may have, your platform team may have spent a lot of time baking in custom logic, custom requirements for your enterprise, all that, everything that you need to be able to bring up a service in your enterprise. So now if you can put that into Proton, and so many people say, well, how is that different than Service Catalog? And my best answer is with Service Catalog, whoever consumes what they put out is the owner of it. With Proton, the consumer, the service team, isn't the owner of the platform. So, and that doesn't mean that they're locked down or restricted or anything like that. You're totally flexible in how what you allow that service team to do. But what it does mean is the service team doesn't have the responsibility of managing updates. All the day two stuff that has to go into the platform doesn't have to fall on the service team. So with Service Catalog, the service team might discover, hey, there's an update to whatever I used out of Service Catalog. So then they have to take the time, test it all out, figure out how to apply the update, figure out, if that update has any new requirements that they need to fill in or anything like that. So it's all on them. And of course, they're busy. They're not going to do that. So, those stacks are going to sit there and age. With Proton, on the other hand, the platform team gets to maintain ownership and visibility of the platform that the service teams are consuming. And so they can understand, hey, this is just a minor change, minor release. It requires zero interaction from the service team. Let's just click an update. And we can see very easily which stacks are out of date, which stacks need to be updated. And then when there is a major update, like, I need to add a new feature and it requires some input from the service team, that's a major update. And so at that point, they can go and schedule with the service team, hey, can you let us know what this information is? When you want to move to it, it's ready for you. You can just fill in the additional information and move to it. So that's the big difference, is who's responsible and where does that responsibility lie? So with Proton, the responsibility sticks with the platform team, which is, I think, what most platform teams want.
I have a follow-up question around, does that mean that Proton's more suitable for like a medium to large size business where they're using containers at scale or services at scale, and they want some management layer above it? Is it suitable for a startup? Let's say I'm a 4 to 5 person startup. Should I look at Proton?
I think if you're a startup, a Proton might be a bit not advanced, but you might grow into Proton. I think the trigger would be, am I building a platform team? If I'm staffing a team, there's someone else on Twitter described Proton as Conway's Law put into a service, and that's very appropriate, because it really is, when I build a platform team, here's the platform for them to be able to use.
And so, look, what does that mean? I think not everyone's going to define, I have a platform team, right? But are you vending app, deployments to, environments to your development teams? I think when you're at that point, that's when you realize, hey, maybe Proton makes a lot of sense. And Proton, another kind of distinction between Service Catalog and Proton is opinionated in the sense that you have environments and then you have your app, your services that you deploy to those environments. So there's kind of, it's another layer of abstraction, but it's really broken up into those two components: the environments, platform team controls. So where you're deploying to, the clusters, where they live, how they operate, all that. And then you have your services, which most likely maybe your platform team will build with a development team to get input and all that. But then the services are just I'm a development team. I need this service. I click a button. Boom. It's a vending machine. I get my Cheetos, you know? So
And what's it's sort of like pulling that together, right? The Cheetos get to get, you know, defined, right? You don't care what goes in there. So, you know, maybe one day you go pop the Cheetos and it's, you know, full of, you know, dye and chemicals, and then the next day, oh, it's all organic. I didn't even know. That's great. It's better for me. Cool. And someone made that decision for you, a trusted party, your platform team, right? Or whatever the team is called. But I think, Pavan, that question was a really good one. It's the heart of how people are reading that. Right? It's like, oh, it's Proton. Well, this doesn't make any sense. There's so much complexity. It's so much stuff. It's like, well, are you already doing all those things in far more complex ways? If you're not, well, okay, fine, good observation, but not entirely on target, right? And that's the thing, is that sort of, it's not a question of, to me, what, you know, what size you are, if you're a startup or not, but it's like, do you have a platform team, or do you have a party? It could be a person, but do you have someone who is defining those environments and vending them? If the answer is yes, then you should look at the service, because it can simplify your life.
So why is Bob Not Allowed wants to know why not Electron? And I just have to say it's because that team is super positive, not super negative. So that's why it's Proton and not Electron.
And on your point, Jesse, I mean, it reminds me of when we announced AWS organizations, that when for viewers who have used AWS for a while and are aware of the particular service, organizations was a control layer on top of other AWS accounts. So if you're using more than one AWS account, which a lot of our customers using AWS at scale did, then organizations made sense for them. If you are starting off with one or two accounts, then probably it doesn't. So
yeah,
that's a parallel I could think of.
So Amarang B8080, sorry. Can you comment on the mutability of Proton? And this is something where I think there's another strong advantage for Proton is the teams don't edit, the service teams don't edit the platform. The platform team edits the platform, and also then the platform team versions it. So it's mutable in that, yes, you can mutate the platform, but then there's a new version. So you treat it like an artifact, and you can move to it, you know, whenever you feel like it. Or potentially, I guess you could move back. I haven't actually looked into that, but you know, you probably can. So yeah, that would be immutable in that regard.
The mutability characteristics follow sort of best practices in this space, right? We treat a version release as an immutable artifact, and you mutate the, you know,
you don't have to change your username. I'm just terrible. I'm sorry.
8080, obviously. That's how you pronounce it. But yeah, that's at the end of the day, this service is like so many of our services, is automating best practices, or whatever we're calling best practices this week. But you know what I mean? What it's sort of you take the lessons learned, because this comes out of having to do this in-house. This comes from you know, AWS teams having to do this in-house and saying we need a better way. And you know, this is like so many of our features. This was sort of an engineer-led, had a vision, made a thing, built a team, built a service. Here it is. So I think what you'll see is a lot of that is rooted in best practices that are learned. So you know, a lot like our other services.
So speaking of our other services, what else have we announced in the past several weeks?
So if we are recapping, can I don't think we talked about EKSD other than in passing, and I think it's worth mentioning if we're kind of doing a full recap here.
Let's just do all the EKS.
Probably worth mentioning. We've had a recap once a week. This will be the final recap, and we're all back to hands-on unboxing, breaking things live very soon. But yeah, that's what this is. So I think EKSD is worth taking just a few seconds to talk about, because I think we have talked about it. We showed it. There's a lot of material out there now. But this is a pretty big win, again, in that space of, like, you know, sort of doing things through lessons learned. So you have a lot of teams out there in the world building Kubernetes clusters. one of the things you need to do is, gather all the bits, put all the patches in place, run your build pipeline, spit out artifacts to deploy. Then you get to the practice of actually building and running the Kubernetes clusters. And that's really at the heart of it. That's what EKSD is. EKS distro, which is a Kubernetes distribution. Just like we have Linux distributions, just like the OpenTelemetry distribution, this is upstream Kubernetes. It is not a fork. It's not a clone. It is a distribution of upstream Kubernetes with all the security patches and usability patches, version patches, features here and there, kind of cut in and then built into deployable artifacts for you. And what's really super cool is that it's released with sort of the metadata is in the form of a CRD, right? So you can actually pull that right into your cluster, take a look at it, see what needs to be done. So it gives you this programmatic, super native way to consume this this distribution, which is really cool. And it's sort of a step on the path toward EKS Anywhere. And that is something that was announced, not launched, but announced at reInvent. And I think people are really excited about that too, because that same thing with ECS Anywhere, the same types of use cases, but maybe you're adopting Kubernetes in your organization, or maybe just that's a better fit for you, sort of the way you work. But the same types of use cases that we went through. So you have maybe large data lakes, you have data sources on site, maybe you have compliance, regulations that, maybe you're on your migration to the cloud, or maybe you're not going to migrate certain things really ever to the cloud. And we want to be able to help you run your work where that is. So yeah, there's really cool, ways to make use of this, but it's the same thing. And so that EKSD is sort of a stepping stone along the way to that. So yeah, really worth calling that out. And if you're interested, if you're already building Kubernetes clusters, you basically do the same way using kops, using kubeatom, but we'll give you the bits, right? And what's cool is that those bits are the same that we use in EKS the service. So if you're looking at, sort of taking those steps and on the journey, maybe migrating workload to EKS, you can build clusters that are basically running the same bits on-prem, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
Are you muted? Oh, no. Okay, you're back.
I was muted because Selman wanted to chime in, but luckily you guys didn't hear that. So
Selman the dog deploying EKSD.
That's right. He was upset. Never mind. Too many jokes. Yeah. Awesome. I love EKSD, and we did a show on it. Justin Garrison joined us and demoed EKSD right out of the gate. So definitely look back at containersfromthecouch.com if you want to get caught up on that. And it's going to be rapidly evolving. So if it's of interest to you, definitely pay attention and keep up with it, because you're going to see some pretty cool stuff, including Ubuntu having their own what would you call it, release of it, using Snap. So snapcraft.io install, you can install EKSD using Snap. So that's pretty cool too.
That's dope. I mean, there's more EKS stuff, and again, a lot of this is all kind of, it may be repeat if you've been watching us over the past couple of weeks, but so I remember yesterday's show, we demoed managed node groups integrated with Spot instances.
Yes.
So Justin did a really cool demo on that,
which I love. And I didn't give Justin the praise that he deserved yesterday for the GIF that he picked for the tweet, because awesome. It was all about, I feel so giddy when I save money. And I remember after big launches, big feature launches, new service launches, things like that at my last startup, that I would sit there and like poke at tuning, like you get it out, you get it running, and then you sit there and you like tune it. And it's all about how can you get it to be as dollar efficient as possible. And using Spot was always, part of that strategy, and just seeing like, I just launched this feature for all of my customers, and it is only costing like this much money.
Pennies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's so cool to be able to do that.
It's super cool, like just running processes on instances, right? But
Yep.
like with containers, we're starting to approach something that's natural, right? Like architecturally, and I know that this is not the case for everybody, but architecturally, we're typically using containers to deploy microservice instances, which are ephemeral, which idempotency is a thing. I never pronounced that right, but things that run.
Good try.
Yeah, in a
What I say.
I say item.
So, deploying something repeatedly, it behaves the same way every time, right? Like this
Right.
is the like characteristics of your canonical container architecture. How incredibly well does that fit in with Spot? Because what's the thing you're worried about? Is your instance goes away. That's okay, right? If you're running a cluster, you got a bunch of managed node groups, you got multiple nodes in there, and a block of them go. Well, that's fine. Kubernetes got your back, right? It's going to reschedule your work. Your services don't care if they come and go, right? I mean, you're basically doing the same work, and you're going to save. You're going to get giddy with
Up
the
to
money.
90% savings is.
Fantastic.
I mean,
right?
wow.
It's super cool, and I love that part of it, and I feel like it's like, yeah, we can all say that, but like really, if you stop and think about it, it's just such a cool fit. It's just so, and yeah, so you configure that through your launch templates, right? So we had launched that just a few months ago, where you basically have this customization and everything. Now you just fly Spot in there, and away you go. It's super cool.
Yeah.
I think pair this with EKS Anywhere and the potential of customers using this in so many different ways, where any bursts or any kind of quick usage or cost savings that they can see, they'd be having a balance of on-premises workloads on Kubernetes along with the advantages that, as Sahil on our YouTube views has mentioned, managed node groups with Graviton and Spot. Like it's amazing what that brings to our customers. So next year would be really exciting. I'm looking forward to customer stories and what they build with our services.
Yeah, totally. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's like when you have racked hardware on-prem and you're migrating to the cloud, it's pretty like you've paid for it, it's in your budget, okay. But it's very unlikely for a vendor to send you a refund check that month if you use less of it, right? And that's, of course, the same thing when you spin up a cluster and if you're not working, your nodes are still running, right? And so now you start looking at auto scaling, ASGs, Spot instances. It starts becoming like, okay, I can actually save a ton of money here compared to literally any other architecture.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adam, I interrupted you there.
No, it was good. I think you nailed it. And by the way, with Spot, I do think it's always you don't necessarily have to start out with Spot. If you're still understanding your workloads, like you don't have to necessarily jump in, understand your workload, make sure it's as ephemeral as, it's ephemeral in nature, and you're not, there's a lot to consider, but
understand how interruptions work in your environment before you sign on to get them randomly. Like that's really the decision point. Is I've seen myself get an interruption. I know how my stack is going to handle it, and I'm fine. And that's when you can say, okay, now let's try out Spot. And the cool thing is you can turn it on and just put excess capacity on. You can put just one AZ on. You can do like all of these. Like in the past, I've had a service that ran in 3 AZs, and I put 2 of them on Spot and 1 stayed on demand. And that way I'm getting savings in 2/3 of my stack instead of the whole stack. That way I know I'm still going to be running, I'm still going to be operational. And then auto scaling can manage, if for whatever reason I lose all my capacity in my Spot on those 2 AZs, I can still pop back up even more capacity on demand and keep going. So it's an awesome tool, but it's advanced. So definitely, like Adam said, get get everything else built out and have a good understanding of it before you add this into the mix.
And you bumped into something there that I think we could talk about for a whole hour unto itself, and maybe we cook up some demos and do that around making sure your clusters are resilient, making sure your services can suffer outages, right? I have been always a big proponent of just cycling stuff, right? Just go in and kill stuff off, spin it back up, and make sure you can do that.
Yes.
And so like Cloud Shell, which it's not a container service, but we're psyched about it and just being able to use it. I'm pretty psyched about this fault injection simulator.
Big time.
That looks cool, right?
Yeah.
So
we need to poke at that and get that on the schedule for January too.
For sure. Because those, basically that type of experimentation has been, something that was really bleeding edge a few years ago, and it just obviously becoming more mainstream to the point where we, in AWS, we see a need to offer the service. And of course, this is, to me, it's sort of like when we have these services that map to common needs. It's like we see that this is something that a lot of our customers need. And there's, a ton of experts out there. There's literally books on this that have been around. So I think we could even think about having some guests on to talk about some of those things, because I think this is something that people are going to be talking about a lot in the coming year.
Yeah, and that's a really good idea. I mean, we have some really talented people here that know about chaos engineering. So like, Adrian Hornsby and so on. So I actually
can get Adrian to join us.
We should do that, because it's, there's so many different avenues, I guess, that you can introduce fault in your environments in AWS. So to be able to have AWS to simulate that, for me as a customer is awesome. I did want to transition into ECS because we were talking about auto scaling. With ECS, if you're familiar or you're not familiar with capacity providers, essentially capacity providers are a way to abstract the EC2 instances from the operators. So it's basically, with capacity providers, we have managed cluster auto scaling built in, and you can enable that functionality. So we announced this, gosh, has it been a year? I mean, it's been, like I said, time has, I don't even know, but we just recently announced some improvements to our capacity provider functionality with our managed auto scaling. So previously, when we first released it, and as we've iterated and heard from our customers, the support for like multi-AZ functionality in an auto scaling group, or multiple instance types in your auto scaling group, the scaling was a little bit slower. It would usually fall back to like step scaling. Well, just recently now, those two specific use cases we now cover with managed cluster auto scaling. So if your ASG spans multiple availability zones, I just tested this yesterday. Actually, I was just playing around with it. I scaled up from 0 tasks with 0 instances running in my cluster to 100 tasks, and it scaled up to it was in a matter of minutes, like a couple minutes, like a few minutes. It was really awesome. So if you're using capacity providers, definitely check it out. If these were some things that you were limited by, you should see a lot of improvement there as well.
Awesome.
And then the other, a few things with ECS, we announced circuit breakers, which I have a blog. I posted a blog on that, but circuit breaker functionality in the ECS rolling deployment strategy. So if your deployment fails, you can enable automated rollbacks. So the ECS scheduler will actually recognize your deployment failed and then auto roll back to the previous healthy version, which, I mean, it sounds simple, but that's a really helpful feature to have. And because look,
it sounds simple because that's the goal.
Yeah.
It's the goal to make that simple. There's a lot of not simple happening under the covers on your behalf, which I think that's what this is all about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam wrote a great blog on that, by the way, if you're interested.
I'm going to find it and post it.
I'm not going to link it. Making one comment in chat took all of my cranial capacity. I almost passed out. Can't
so
do
glad
it.
you're watching the chat. I'm so proud of you.
So Sahil just brought up one question that I did want to loop back on. So in the neighborhood and realm of scaling, the EKS development team, the scalability team within the team, I just announced a new open source project toward the beginning of reInvent called Carpenter. So that is some new thinking, some fresh thinking on how to actually do scaling in a Kubernetes cluster. Very early stages, but all open source. Definitely in the scope of SIG scalability. We have maintainers in that SIG. And for those of you who aren't aware, so Kubernetes is broken up into a lot of different teams that do a lot of work upstream, and SIGs, or the interest groups, are where specific types of work happen. So yeah, that's going to be all open. It'll be something that we look to customers, and also just the community members to say, like, have some feedback on. But effectively, it's a new way to think about sort of how we do cluster scaling. So that's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
And there was a question. Sorry, now it's just rapid fire back and forth. But I just wanted to address this question from Max Payne Life. On ECS, when running a deployment, but the container fails to start up, how do you cancel the deployment? Well, literally the circuit breaker functionality covers this exact use case. If it fails, if you enable automated rollbacks, it'll just roll back to the previous healthy version of that service deployment. But if you're previous to this being released, you'd have to go in and either via an API call, CLI call, or in the console, you'd have to redeploy the service to a previous version. Or if you just wanted to stop the bleeding and stop the churning, you would just basically set your task deployment to 0, which your service deployment, which you probably don't want to do, right?
Yeah, and that kind of is a workaround more than a this is what you should do kind of thing. So that's why circuit breakers is like a direct answer. Something that you do want to do is to set that up and start using that in your deployments.
Yes, and it's in public preview right now. So as you use it, if you have feedback, please, containers roadmap, give us your feedback. Let us know what works, what doesn't, and what we want to improve that. But I'm just, feel free to stop me anytime. But I was just going to rapid fire a couple more ECS announcements. Yeah. We GA'd Copilot,
yes.
AWS Copilot, which kind of a big deal. Brent, do you want to talk about Copilot?
Yeah, well, so yes. And let me just back up for a second, because I get asked this a lot. I just want to run my container. How do you do it? So let me just give you my own personal thought process. If I need to just run a container, maybe it's an API, maybe it's a front end, maybe I have a set of containers that I need to run and I don't want to think about it, then my go-to is Copilot. So when do I not use Copilot? When do I have to move past that decision and think of a different choice? It's when I can't run either in ECS or on Fargate. So I need something like storage, or I need something like a GPU, or I don't know, other stuff that might disqualify Fargate today, or might disqualify ECS today. So once that happens, that's when I start to look at, okay, either I can still use ECS on EC2, or I move on to Kubernetes. So that's kind of my thought process, because I don't want to have to think about it. I want to be in dev mode, not in ops mode. And a Copilot gives me that flexibility. Now, if you're already operating on Kubernetes, maybe you're in a more complex environment and you're doing a lot of things, a lot of stuff happening on your cluster and that sort of thing, or you're operating in your data center plus AWS, and so you want that same experience everywhere, obviously then my go-to would be EKS. So I'm not anti-EKS. I love it. I love operating in Kubernetes. Yeah.
Brent, just a quick note on that. Like, if you're EKS inclined, then we announced a project this year called CDKs, which is kind of a developer-friendly language for generating your YAMLs for your EKS environments, and then you tie it up with CDK, which is already done. So CDK a CNCF project now as a sandbox project. So so that's the parallel I see with Copilot. If you're inclined on ECS, you have that, and then you have.
I think Copilot, yes and no. I'm with you. I think it's definitely parallel to CDK. But I think Copilot takes it even one level further insofar as I don't have to write. Like I just have to answer a few questions, and I get exactly. It's an even higher level abstraction to be able to run my service.
I wonder if people would be interested in something like that for Kubernetes, right? I mean, there are other tools out there. There's open source tools, but I don't know of a thing that is that opinionated, right? And that's really the thing, is that usually with open source projects, you're keeping the opinion out of it for the most part, and really just you're implementing sort of the known best practices. But things like, well, you're going to use this type of deployment or whatever. We don't do that, but maybe we could if people were interested.
HashiCorp Waypoint. I mean, we took a look at
Waypoint's dope. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my God. See, there's whole parts of my brain that just don't work anymore. All right. I looked at Waypoint. It's so cool.
It is. And we took a look at that early on. It was basically the day or day after it launched. And I remember, the Waypoint team joined us. It was an awesome show.
I wasn't on that call. So, I mean, I wasn't on that session.
Yeah.
But
Eddie Zaneski was here, helping us with the demo, running the demo. It was awesome. So like I would totally go that route if I was, wanted to be an EKS shop or something like that. I think CDK is excellent as well. I also think there's a future where Proton, is a strong player in this game, because again, your platform team would be able to build out that. It's all about the opinion, right? And they're bringing the opinion, and it's going to be unique to your organization. And so then what's left? Just answering the few questions. So that's the experience that I think I like with Copilot, and I get it with Copilot today. And I think there will be a day when we'll be able to get it for EKS as well.
But it just. So the CDK and Copilot parallel, I think if Copilot, I don't even have to think about being a developer. Like literally, if someone gives me a Docker file and they say, I just need this to run behind a load balancer, Copilot init, well, it's opinionated. It builds in good practices when it deploys, builds a cluster, builds a network, builds all the things that if I don't know how to do that, boy, it makes it really easy. CDK has that as well, but CDK, there's still like, I would say to jump in, you got to learn a little bit, right? Like there's still some barrier of entry just to understand how to build and deploy with CDK. But I think Copilot is like really easy. And there was a question around Copilot. Can you specify subnets? I believe you can specify the VPC. That's something we added recently. I'm not super sure. Brent, do you know, can we specify specific subnets?
I feel like you can. I'm not certain of it though. So so take my answer with a major grain of salt, because you'll need to do your research on that. I've flipped my opinion on this, and Pavan might want to reach through the internet and smack me for this. But that notion of containers need to run on private subnets, I'm kind of over that. I think that they can now be on public subnets as long as they're well protected by security groups and things like that. So I don't think you get that much more protection, if any more, by putting it on a private subnet, because you're still allowing cross subnet traffic from the public subnet. And so the original intent of the Copilot team and the reason they picked to deploy on public subnets is to save that NAT gateway money. Let's just keep it simple. We know your container needs to receive a request and it needs to be able to respond to it. And it's super simple to do that on a public subnet. And it doesn't mean that your container has to take traffic from the public. In fact, it won't. So it's only going to get its traffic from the load balancer or from its front end.
Speaking of exactly that, right? And if you got more ECS stuff coming, keep it coming, but I'm just gonna throw a little bit of a note in here. Love you too. I'm gonna throw a little note in here. Light sail containers,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about just all this new stuff, this recent stuff. That's pretty great, right?
Yeah.
So basically, it's that workflow. You say, well, I want to point you at a container image, and yeah, please give me a load balancer. You don't even have to think, actually, give me a load balancer. You just think, I want to access it. It just says, okay, here you go. A couple minutes later, ba-bing, ba-boom, and you got it running. So, that's pretty great. And if you want to just sort of stand something up, especially if it's like a site, if it's a monolithic little website or something. My demo case was the 2048 game. Obviously, wanted to play a little of that. My phone was just out of reach, so I deployed the 2048 container, and it just spun the whole thing up right there, and pretty great.
Board, huh?
Yeah.
So many options. We have so many options, and again, just like a dizzying array if you're coming at all of them, but you're probably not, right? You're going to think about what you want and what you need. If you want a website where you just give it an image and you get a load balancer, well, we got that. And if that's not the same use case as I have some Kubernetes deployments and I want to run them, can you help? Sure, we can help with that too. So many options for all the customers, but for you as a customer, we have probably just what you need based on what your needs are, what your requirements are. So
Why is Bob not allowed?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah. He says ultimately that pronunciation isn't important if the tools fit the shop's culture. So yeah, absolutely. Model it after your humans. That's going to be your best choice for least resistance. So yeah, definitely just talk to the team. Let the team decide. That's going to be cool. And
I think Bob is slowly becoming allowed. I'm just going to say.
Yeah. There's no more question. Bob,
you're allowed, Bob.
It's official. In my reInvent talk, my reInvent, like the hey, I guess we'll have you talk in the next session. I'm just kidding, but it's mid-January. We have like 200 plus sessions. But one thing, a little sneak peek I talk about is build for your team's strengths. Don't just bring something in because it's cool and you really like it. You have to really think about what's going to make you and your organization successful. So use the right tools for the job. Sorry. We say that a lot, but it's true. Use what makes sense for you and your org.
Yeah. And I don't remember when I mentioned this before, but it's all about having choices. We're not all one thing. And so we want to offer you choices that fit what you're looking for. When you walk into a hardware store, they don't have only a single hammer to offer you. They have a choice, a variety, because there are different situations that call for different hammers. And especially then, you might be looking for a screwdriver instead of a hammer. And we got that too. And we got choices there. So,
and by the way,
hammers.
Like at the end of the day, a hammer is a hammer. So it may not be like, it was just, there was that internal conversation we had that was so good. We're like, yeah, you may have picked a hammer. Like it's not the most perfect hammer, but it does the job. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And like we have a rental shop as well. Like if you want to rent it,
that's right. You can rent a jackhammer if you want.
SDS Plus. Like we have SDS Plus toolings as well. So
I love it.
It's about the requirements, right? Like, I mean, maybe a hammer is just a hammer. You're just hanging up a picture on your wall. Maybe you actually need a 4-ounce dead blow hammer. We'll see, right? I mean, like it's all up to you. And we do seem to have all the hammers.
Jesse knows his hammers.
I don't know why we're talking about hammers. I really like hammers. I have like 9 hammers. I'm just saying.
Do you have a framing hammer?
Oh, I have 2 framing hammers. Yep.
Yeah,
I thought that was a town in Massachusetts.
Estwing.
Framingham, Massachusetts?
Framingham, Massachusetts, next to Eastwing, Massachusetts. It's Estwing, Yeah, I have a 22-ounce Estwing that I really love. Anyway, and I've been to Framingham too many times. Are we off the rails? Are we wrapping up?
I think we probably should because or else the next hour is going to be hammers, power drivers and snowblowers.
Oh man, don't get Jesse started on snowblowers.
Stop me. Private chat.
All right. So Here's what's coming up for Containers from the Couch. We're on a break, so we're gonna be gone for the next 2 weeks. Then we're gonna pop back in starting, at the beginning of January. So definitely, you get 2 weeks to catch up on all of our content. Go to containersfromthecouch.com. Go to youtube.com/containersfromthecouch. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that alert button. We want to make sure that you don't miss anything. We're going to have this show continue through January, through 2021. So we're always here talking about containers. It's not always a service that we happen to own or manage. We'll bring on guests. We'll bring on partners. We'll bring on other service teams. So it's just about you being able to run your container in your platform or environment with as little resistance as possible. So if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see us talk about in the upcoming year, tweet them at us.
Yeah.
Real Adam J. Keller, 98 PM, JLB13. I got that wrong in my tweet the other day. I transposed a couple letters, my bad. And Brent Contain. So definitely, hit any of us up and let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about. And we're going to demo, we're going to have guests on. So I think 2021 is going to be a pretty exciting year. And just because we had this flurry of announcements for reInvent doesn't mean we're done. So there's still going to continue to be a lot of cool things in the pipeline that we're going to be releasing throughout the next year. So definitely keep an eye out and keep tuned in to this show, and we'll keep you up to date.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks to Jesse. Thanks to Pavan. Thanks to the rest of my team for coming on this show as often as you do and taking the time. I really appreciate it, and I think that this has turned into something awesome, and it's going to keep getting even better. So I want to thank everyone for all that they've done.
And
Thank
Adam,
you to you. Oh.
and from all of us as well. So yeah,
Cool.
holiday season.
Absolutely.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.
Yeah.